gentlemen, thank you all for bearing with us. We're a minute or two behind here, but we'll get started. We will call the Board of Zoning Appeals regular meeting of Monday, December the 12th to order. We can have a roll call, Ms. Ragsdale.
Mr. Stone?
Here.
Mr. Brumfield? Here. Mr. Yeaman? Here. Ms. Deering?
Here.
Mr. Craddock?
Here.
Mr. Merricks?
Yeah.
Mr. Easley?
Here. Very good. If you all would, please rise. Let's have a moment of silence, and then after that, we will say pledge of allegiance to our flag. Thank you. Please join me in pledging the allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Members of the board, you have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is it look in order? We'll take a motion that we approve it. So moved. Second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, make it known. Okay, thank you. You have in your packet the minutes from the November the 7th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? I had one. We need to add item number 4 that the property would be in compliance with VDOT standards. I didn't see that. If I did, if it's there, I overlooked it. If we could have those added to the minutes.
I see it right there. Is that what you're talking about?
Are they there? I just did not read them.
Look right there. Existing entrance needs to be upgraded to concrete.
Forgive me, they're right there in the middle of it. Excuse me.
Yeah.
All right. Are your minutes presented correctly?
I move to be accepted.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Have a second. All those in favor of the minutes as presented? Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any old business?
I would just like to remind you all that next Tuesday, we will have the second joint work session with the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission to start going over the zoning ordinance update proposed changes. So that'll start at 3 p.m. and it'll be in this room.
3 p.m.
And that date is
20th. December 20th.
Yes.
December 19th.
20th.
That's right, today's Monday, isn't it? Excuse me. Okay. Okay. Any other old business?
I do not have any other old business.
Any new business?
Next month, we will have one case. It's a special use permit for the placement of a double-wide mobile home. Additionally, we have the meeting schedule that has been given to you for 2023. So that is a list of all of your meeting dates for next year.
Everyone have that? Okay. Thank you. I do not have a chairman's report, so we will proceed with the public hearing. Ladies and gentlemen, pursuant to Article 5, Division 7 of the Pittsylvania County Zoning Ordinance, we, the Board of Zoning Appeals, have been empowered to hear and decide specific applications and appeals in support of said ordinance. In accomplishing this important task, we are charged with promoting the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Pittsylvania County. We must ensure that all our decisions and recommendations be directed to these goals and that each be consistent with the environment, the comprehensive plan, and in the best interest of Pennsylvania County, its citizens, and its posterity. Anyone here to speak to the board other than the applicant regarding zoning cases will be limited to 3 minutes. All right. The time is now 6:09. We will open public hearing, case S-22-025, Larry and Cheryl Estes. Ragsdale, your report?
Case S-22-025, William and Cheryl Estes have petitioned for a special use permit on 11.79 acres located on State Road 875 Horseshoe Road in the Westover Election District to allow for a campground. On November 1st, 2022, the Planning Commission recommended by a 5-to-1 vote with opposition that the petitioner's request be granted with the conditions submitted by staff. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, William Estes is here to represent the petition.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Back in 2001, when the 265 bypass was made or built, we put in a campground. The workers that was working on the bypass had some campers and didn't have anywhere to stay. So, we had a brainstorm idea, my wife and I, along with them, to do a campground. And we did. We had a temporary permit, and as time went on, the permit ran out. And as time went on, I used the campground for friends and neighbors' friends that come in. And a few months ago, I received a letter from the zoning office that I was not in compliance. So I contacted Ms. Ragsdale and said, hey, let's get this thing under compliance. So we started there. And I've had a few campers over there in the last 18 months, well, several, since the Berry Hill project started. I believe I've had about over 18 months period now, I've had about 12 campers in and out working on the facility over there. The last 4 was over there. They left about a month and a half ago, and they spent about 2 months over there working on the power substation at the park there. I think in Amherst, Virginia now. Never had any problems. Good people. They, most all construction workers, they leave on Thursday afternoon and go home, and they come home, come back to the park on Monday evening after work and eat a little bite and gone to bed, and up at 6 o'clock the next morning and gone. And, that's primarily what we've done with the campground. It's only 7 sites.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Estes? I will, let me mention too, while Mr. Estes is up here, that I've got a petition with probably...
It's 40 names on the petition.
Okay.
They were within a half a mile in each direction of the campground. Everyone but one person that I asked signed it. I think 9 of the people that got letters, 7 of them signed it supporting the campground. Didn't have any problem with petitions. I could have filled this room up tonight, but I figured That'd save a little gas and save a little travel time for those people.
And for the boards, looking through this, all the addresses are either Horseshoe Road or Graves Park Road.
Right.
So, nobody on here from Indiana or anything of that nature.
No, I was sure of that.
Sometimes we'll see that.
Yeah, just feel free to call all of them.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Estes? You mentioned, now, how many sites are you saying are there and intend to be there?
7.
7. Okay, so those are the ones on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
On the site plan.
Okay, now the second page, you've got 6 sites.
Should be 7.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, excuse me, 7 sites. Now, what are they?
That's just 2 different shots of it, 2 different drawings of the same thing.
Okay, all right, so you don't have, you're not proposing?
No, I don't have 14.
Very good, okay. The entrance and exit, are you sharing a driveway with the house?
No.
Okay. So are the driveways, and I didn't see a driveway near the brick house.
All right, they've got their own driveway there. It's a paved asphalt driveway. Now, he uses my driveway to go into his garage.
Okay. All right. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. May have a few more after we
All right,
go into committee. Thank you.
thank you.
Is there anyone signed up to speak? Glenn Hudson.
Hello.
Hello.
As you just said, my name's Glenn Hudson. Larry is my brother-in-law. I live right straight in front of the campground. Probably other than his daughter and her husband, I probably live closer to it than anybody else. I've never had any problem, never heard nothing out of the way or anything like that. And I just wanted to say Larry's been a good brother-in-law to me, and he, whatever he's told me over the years, he pretty much done it, so you can depend on what he said.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Don Simpson.
Hey, my name's Dawn Simpson, and we live directly beside of the campground. And the driveway that you was asking about, that's our driveway. We've never had any problem with any of the people over there. You know, most of the time we leave our garage door open. Our dog goes in and out. Nobody's ever messed with anything. Everything has always been good. And I don't understand what the problem is.
Thank you. Robin Weddle, did I say that right?
I'm Robin Weddle. I live across the road at 4809 Horseshoe Road. My biggest issue with the campground is how it will devalue my land. because I've worked my whole life. We've lived there 40 years. And they're trying to take profit that I have and turn it negatively. That's my whole objection with it. No, they've never had anybody over there that caused a problem, but there's that potential. You have transient people that move in and out. That's my whole issue, because we have a residential area. So, as Mr. Estes said, that they offered places to stay for people that did the construction. So there's 50-plus campsites in the area without his 7. So Mr. Lewis in Cascade is in the process, very close to opening up 36 sites, which is much closer to the mega park. If you look at HMM Park in Axton, they have another 15 sites. So that's 50 plus that would be available for workers that come to the mega park to work. So it's just the devaluing of my land, that's the big thing. Plus, I don't want extra people if we can prevent it, because no, they may not be criminals, but they could be criminals. So they know your pattern because you go in and out. So that is one of my things. And I know that Mr. Estes had a special permit back in the early 2000s. And up until recently, he only had like 1 or 2 campers over there. Most of the time they were either storage or some of his family. But this summer, we've had an influx of campers. More traffic, more noise, more everything. So you might ask, who wants a campground across the road from their home? No one. Even Mr. Estes, where he lives, the campground's not behind his house on his vacant land. He moves it over the furthest it can be away from his land. Another issue that I have is that campground was only like on 1 acre. Well, he wants the rezoning for the whole 11.7 acres. So at what period of time is he going to be over here asking for more and more? So that's my objection. So I do have some things I'd like to bring up. If it is passed, could it be for a period of time like it was years ago to have an expiration date on it? And if that's not possible, could we at least make it aesthetically pleasing with landscaping, like with wood, trees or shrubberies as a barrier so when I walk out my front door, I'm not hit in the face with 7 campers? So, you know, it's just generally the type of people that could come in. We don't know that. And also the devaluing of my land. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question.
Yes.
For me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I may have missed this. How long have you lived in the neighborhood?
40 years since almost 40, since 1984.
In the house across the
The
road?
house across the road. We had a trailer there, and then we built a home. And also, I'd like to point out this. If he does have a petition, I don't have a petition because I'm here just to share my thoughts for my land. But if you look, I guarantee you 10% are his family members. So, thank you.
Is that Wayne Adkins?
Good afternoon. My name's Wayne Atkins. I live on the corner 875 and Horseshoe Road. And the concerns that I have about a campground is a campground. So on page number 16, you have 7 sites. Each site is for 2 cars, so that's 14 vehicles. that could be there at one time, not counting people that's going to come in to visit or whatever. And the little road that we have ain't like 15 foot wide. So you got RVs and everything else coming up the road, traffic that comes, and the horseshoe road comes back to 58. So it ain't one way in and one way out. And that's the issue to me. And the entranceway off 865, if it is passed, there should be lights at the entranceway. It should be a nice entranceway where when you do ride down, or the planning commission rides down there, they see a nice RV campground, and not just something stuck in a field. And as far as I know, it's no road at all access right now if it wants to start now. And another thing is noise barrier. Like I said, it's going to be a minimum of 14 cars there all the time. So you've got that at 10 and 11 o'clock at night. I can hear traffic on 58 from my house, and I live on the corner lot. So I know from a campground, I can definitely hear traffic or people outside talking, carrying on. I mean, that's just normal. But I would like to have a noise barrier or whatever along the road that leads into the campground. And not only that, I would like to see a paved driveway, and that way, in the wintertime or the summertime when it rains and snows, you don't get mud all over the highways and go all the way down the road. And another thing, last thing, is the campground. A campground has campfires. How would you control that? And that's up to the planning commission and Ms. Ragsdale. And she'll take care of a fine job. She does a great job. But I appreciate everything y'all do, and thank you for listening.
Any questions for Mr. Atkins?
Wait a minute.
Wait just a moment. Wait just a minute, sir. Wait just a moment. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Okay, that's all that's signed up to speak to the board. Is there anyone else from the public other than the applicant that would like to address the board? All right, Mr. Estes, if you'd like to come back up and rebut or comment on the statements that have been made.
As far as Mr. Atkins stated about getting mud in the road, I've got a good solid gravel entrance going in and out of the campground. I don't see no reason for it to be paved. And as far as lighting it up, putting signs up to show us the campground, hey, I don't want to do that. I don't advertise. It's word of mouth, and I can screen everybody that comes in over there. That way I can control everything. I have turned some away before, just because I didn't think they was right for the neighborhood. My daughter lives beside of it. My brother-in-law lives right across the street in front of it. Mr. and Ms. Weddle live right up the street adjacent to it. My son lives next to it. And she's right. Maybe 10% of the ones that signed that petition are family. But family is right there. They're the ones that got the letters. You know, I'm going to protect my family and my neighbors. So, you know, I just ask y'all to grant me a permit. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Estes before he goes? All right, thank you, sir. All right, the time is 6:27. We'll close the public hearing. And we'll go into a committee of the whole to discuss the pros and cons.
Well,
Comments?
I tried to list adverse effects that I heard. And what I heard was devalue of land, traffic, noise. And I don't know of anything else I heard. Did y'all hear anything else? I just want to say, I can't say personally I'm fond of anything other than residential, being in residential, whether it be a campground or garage or whatever. And that being said, and for I understand this correctly, I want to make sure we're right. If an expansion happens, it comes to your office, and your office approves it, and it does not have public input anymore, correct?
That is correct.
And that's a concern for me, because if something happens, and you go to that other parcel, which is up above it, I guess, or below it or whatever, but, and it's going to be more campers, and the public has no input on that, is that, I just don't know if that's right, but that's just my opinion.
Well, now, but we're only approving
This-
7 sites.
Yeah,
Is
but,
that correct?
but
I mean,
he-
I
but-
shouldn't say approving, 7 sites are being applied for.
right, but he is getting a permit for 11 acres of land, right?
He's asking for a special use permit.
Right.
For a campground. Now, unless you all set a restriction on the number of sites that he is able to have on the property, without coming back before the board and reapplying, then if he chose to expand, it would just come to my office and the health department, because those two agencies regulate
So
campgrounds.
that's what I'm thinking. And I had rather put a limit on this permit, and if you want to expand, then he goes through the whole process and has a public hearing. Is that?
That can be a condition you impose, correct?
Be a condition, okay. I just want,
One of the things that, Ms. Weddle mentioned was landscaping if the board decided to approve the permit. And I would certainly be in favor if the board moves in that direction to have one of the requirements to be landscaping on the front and the sides of the campground, be it staggered,
any residential property,
well,
screen any residential property.
which would be basically the front and side
Right.
of the campground. Mr. Merrick's mentioned noise. I mean, is that something that rises to denying the special use permit?
No, we can always put a condition to abide by the noise ordinance and whatever that ordinance says.
The devaluation of neighborhood property?
That's subjective. I'm not sure.
That's just something.
It's a yea or nay.
I don't think we can. Mr. Merrick, you mentioned putting a condition in to limit the campground.
I personally would limit it to 7 sites, and if he wants to expand, it'd be great, but he'll need to go have another public hearing to do so.
7 sites as proposed in the
Yes,
presentation.
right.
Yes, no, sir, I'm sorry. Now that we've closed the public hearing, we can't do that, unless one of the board members has a question for you.
So, I'm just thinking long-term, this was originally approved for a temporary permit back in 2001, so it's been campers there off and on for 21 years. Mr. Estes, based on what we've heard today, looks like he's been doing a good job on the type of people that are coming in, not causing any issues in the neighborhood that we are aware of. So, but that could change in 5, 10 years if someone else purchases the property. So I don't know if this board would consider
I kind of agree with you. What concerns me too is, in the neighbors, I know a lot of family and a lot of good people, but all of us going to die. But that special use permit will not die. It's going to be there forever. So might be, and I don't know what kind of time frame it is. I think 5 may be a little short. It may, because given the Berry Hill project like it is, maybe it ought to be 10 years or something like that, but I don't know.
I believe that when anyone in the county is running a business, I think they should be able to, and this is basically what it is should they be able to run one and hopefully turn a profit and without too many restrictions.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel. I did not drive by this property, so I would be very interested in someone that knows this area very well, maybe could explain to me, if you're driving down the road or you look across, what would you see if there's a few campers in sight? I would like to hear, does it really need landscaping, which I know that would be a big expense, but it's needed, I think it's necessary, but if not, I would be very interested in hearing from somebody from this board that may know the area a little bit better than I.
I kind of agree with you that, there's no point in having it if you're not going to turn a profit. And we've already heard that there are many times there's no campers there, so it's not a continuous operation. It's just when there's a project going on in the area that the workers need somewhere to camp at. So I would be more inclined to vote for a 10-year limit on the permit than I would the other restrictions on it.
Okay. All right, there are two conditions that have been presented by the staff. We don't necessarily have to take them. We have in the past followed their recommendations. And so we would, if we made a positive motion to potentially include those two recommendations along with, I'm hearing a 10-year. Mr. Data, how would the wording of that be? That's something we've not done in the past.
Of which condition, I'm sorry, I was looking at the 2 written by staff. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, what did you say?
How would the wording of a condition be if we put a 10-year limitation on the special use permit that the applicant would have to come back in 10 years and reapply?
Well, it would be expiration or review timeline. You could do one or the other. Review for compliance, review for issues, or actual expiration where it expires and must be reapplied. You kind of have 2 options. Are you talking about it expiring, or would a review be sufficient? That's kind of my question.
I didn't hear you. I apologize.
I'm sorry, there's 2 ways to do it. There's review, where they have to come back and it's reviewed for compliance, or actual expiration, where the SUP expires and the applicant must reapply to continue to have the use.
So the review, the administrator would present to the board that this 10-year period is up, and the board reviews it, and then we either approve it or disapprove it?
Correct.
Or
But there's no public hearing with a review. Or is it?
It would be a public hearing, but it would not be a termination. One would be automatic and one would just be a review.
So probably, if not probably, but if we wanted to have a public hearing, the best thing to do would be to put
Expiration.
an expiration date, an expiration on the time period of the special use permit. And then the applicant would have to reapply for the special use permit?
I would think both would require public hearings. The question becomes, do you want him to reapply? It expires automatically, so if nothing happens, the use is no longer in effect, you have to reapply. Or do you want to set a timeline where it's brought up to public hearing and you decide whether to continue the use or to extinguish the special use permit? Does that make sense? I think the process would be very similar in both. The difference in one would be, one is automatic that expires unless he reapplies and approved, and the other one, it is brought up, reviewed, and decided whether it be continued or extinguished. But I would imagine both would require public hearings. I can't imagine review not being a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I know that you visited the site also. I just want to put my 2 cents in on that. As I noticed that when we went there, there was a good gravel base on the driveway. The property looked mowed, looked manicured, looked nice. The campers there, they looked nice. I didn't see anything that was concerning. But as he's talking about having a review, that would, whoever the owner was at the time, would probably kind of hold them to making sure they kept it looking decent so that they wouldn't be cited for any issues. So, but I will say at the time right now, everything looked nice when I went by there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I guess the question comes down is, if we do a positive motion, do we do a whatever year review or an expiration of the special use permit that the applicant has to reapply?
I feel like we should do a review. I mean, if he's in compliance, he shouldn't have to go through all the expense of reapplying.
I agree, and I'm okay with that. But I still think we need a condition of 7 sites, and if he wants to expand, that you need a public hearing to do so.
Very good, okay. So, so is the board of an opinion we'd like to read a positive motion? Is that what I'm hearing?
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'm going to read this, and then we will tweak it or do whatever we need to do to see if we get a positive
Mr.
vote
Chair,
on it.
Could you read the conditions first, perhaps?
I'm sorry?
Does everyone know the 3 conditions? Is it 3?
All right, let's go at it that way. The recommendations are any future expansion will require site plan approval by the Pennsylvania County Community Development Office to ensure compliance with all applicable zoning regulations. Number 2, must remain in compliance with all applicable Virginia Department of Health regulations. Number 3 would be the 7 sites.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to modify or change the first condition, right?
Okay, so you're saying that we don't even need number 1?
No,
If
because
we're
number
going
1
to-
is future expansion being approved by the zoning administrator as opposed to.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, so scratch number 1. So number 1 would be must remain in compliance with all applicable Virginia Department of Health regulations. Number 2 would be the 7 sites that were presented in the site plan. Any further expansion would have to come before the Board of Zoning Appeals for their consideration.
Well, to go through the whole process, right? Planning commission and everything, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you have to,
So they would have to apply for a special use permit for any expansion
Right.
of the site.
right.
And then number 3, there would be a review of the operation mentioned 5 years, we had mentioned 10 years. 10 years, the pleasure of the board. Within, after 10 years, to be sure that the operation is in compliance with the county.
For review of compliance and conditions.
I'm sorry.
The permit will be reviewed in 10 years for compliance and conditions.
Permit will be reviewed in 10 years for
Compliance and conditions.
compliance and conditions, okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So if this board approves this with this condition, Emily, how will you know in 10 years to do this? Is it something set up in a computer that gives you an alert? How will you know this?
This will be the first of this requirement that I'm aware of. So we will come up with some way that we are alerted in 10 years.
10-year planner.
Yes, we do.
The old 10-year plan. Mr. Estes, you've heard the conditions that have been presented. If the board were to approve these, is that something you could live with?
No problem. One question, the landscape.
It didn't come up. That's right. All right, so let's read a positive motion and see how it goes. Whereas Larry and Cheryl Estes have petitioned the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special use permit for a campground, and whereas we find no substantial detriment to adjacent property, that the character of the zoning district will not be changed thereby, and that such use will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance. And whereas there are no significant adverse effects upon adjacent property that cannot be mitigated through conditions, I move the special use permit be granted with the following conditions. Excuse me. Must remain in compliance with all applicable Virginia Department of Health regulations. The 7 sites presented to the board will be the only sites that are
Permitted.
approved. Any further expansion will have to come back and a special use permit be applied for. Number 3, the permit will be reviewed in 10 years for compliance and conditions. Is that the positive motion you all want?
I'll move.
We have a motion.
A second.
We have a second. All those in favor of voting for that positive motion, make it known. Very good. Congratulations. Good luck to y'all. Do I hear a motion that this meeting be adjourned? So moved. So moved.